Hi everyone, so I've been busy theory crafting a lot of Diablo 4 builds lately, as you can see here, and we're not nearly done yet. Since I'm maining Rogue, I also spend a lot of time looking at the different combinations that are possible with the Rogue. And one thing that always struck me as kind of odd was Rain of Arrows. So if you have tried Rain of Arrows in the beta, for example, you might have noticed that it was a very long cooldown and not really doing much for it. So it seems like we need some heavy synergies to make this skill in particular work in some way. I felt that in contrast to Rain of Arrows, pretty much every skill and even every passive on the Rogue tree actually had a reason to exist and a reason to be used under certain circumstances. A lot of these are very situational tools, something that you can use to diversify the playstyle of your build. But in general, the way that Rogue builds seem to work is you pick one of the core skills, and then one of the basic skills most of the time, and then you just have like 4 extra slots where you can do basically whatever you want. And then there is Rain of Arrows, which just seems absolutely atrocious on its own. But it does have some natural synergies, most importantly the imbuements. So you get a 20% boost to your imbuements that are applied to Rain of Arrows, and then you also have to knock down on the second wave, which just allows you to very safely walk into the room, press the button, and everything will be crowd controlled, essentially until they're dead. So this is kind of the idea of such a build. But with a 60 seconds cooldown, this would be nowhere and really usable without really heavily reducing the cooldown somehow. So there's one obvious way to do that, which is the advanced twisting blades. I guess most of you that have played the beta will have used this as a rogue, and it just seems like a very powerful tool that I'm not even sure will survive until launch, but for now we don't have any word on them nerfing it, so maybe it will stick around. But more importantly, Blizzard has previewed the Word of Hakan amulet that I've also talked about in another video already. This is a unique amulet that allows Rain of Arrows to have all 3 imbuements at the same time, and you don't even need to activate them to get this effect, the way it sounds like. So with this amulet, you can actually make a potential pretty crazy poison imbuement build. I did some napkin math, and it seems like you can do something like around 500 or even up to 600% of the base damage as extra poison damage. If you have high enough skill ranks and you have some other synergies and you have all this extra potency for the imbuements applied to Rain of Arrows. So you see this here, for example, there's another 40% extra potency multiplicatively. But it all doesn't really help us if you can only use Rain of Arrows once a minute or so. So this is simply way too infrequent. You're going to use it 3 times in a dungeon or so, and then you're kind of done. So obviously this is not very helpful. And now it seems like the missing link has actually surfaced. So here's this other default planner website that I've been using lately. That has some nice little feature updates, including a skill bar and the choice for specializations. And here's finally the third one, preparation. After you spend 100 energy, you reduce your ultimate's cooldown by 4 seconds, and your ultimates reset your other cooldowns, which is a very powerful effect. So in general, all of these specializations on the Rogue are extremely powerful, and they kind of define the build and define the playstyle, and they are something to build around and play around. And in this case, this is absolutely going to be the choice for this build. And we can do some math on that. So if you look at the base skill Rain of Arrows, it has a 60-second cooldown. Let's say that we have a bit of cooldown reduction on our gear, let's say something like 20% or so. So we have a total cooldown of 48 seconds that we have to wait to use Rain of Arrows again. Now we have cooldown resets coming from twisting blades, so every time we use the skill, we get at least 1 second off our cooldowns, up to 3 seconds. Let's just assume that we are hitting a single target boss, and we only get this effect once every time we attack. You can stack up a bunch of extra attack speed, for example, accelerating aspect, and you're dual wielding with daggers or something like that. So let's say you have something like 2 attacks per second. And in addition to that, the base energy cost of twisting blades is 30 energy. Let's say you have a bit of energy cost reduction from some source, and it costs 25 resource, and you attack twice per second. This means you spend 50 energy per second. So every 2 seconds, you will proc preparation and reduce the cooldown further by 4 seconds. And at the same time, you have done 4 attacks, so you get another 4 seconds reduction for your Rain of Arrow cooldown. So if you add these things up, in 2 seconds, you get 4 seconds cooldown reduction from twisting blades and 4 seconds cooldown reduction from preparation. So in 2 seconds, you actually reduce the cooldown by 10 seconds. So if we take our 48 seconds base cooldown and divide it by 10, we have to spend around 5 times 2 seconds, so around 10 seconds total, to reset our cooldown on Rain of Arrows, which should probably allow you to cast it pretty much every single monster pack. And not only that, but the Rain of Arrows will also reset your other cooldowns. So you can use your Poison Immune pretty much non-stop for your Twisting Blades. You can use your Dark Shroud all the time. You're gonna reset your dash, so only have 1 point in dash here, for example. And you get like both your charges back, I guess. And you don't actually need to like full invest in that. Now, obviously, I can't safely say that this is going to be like a super crazy endgame build, even though it sounds pretty good to cast Rain of Arrows every few seconds. But it's about demonstrating the concept of what you can do on a rogue with some of those crazy combinations. And this is not the only combo you can use with Preparation and Twisting Blades. There's, for example, Exposure that allows you to reset the cooldowns of your trap skills, which can potentially enable like an insane trapper playstyle on its own. And if you look at Death Trap, for example, it only has a base cooldown of 45 seconds, and then occasionally you get this lucky hit effect that reduces it even further, while also proccing your Twisting Blades, while proccing the Preparation, and potentially you can just throw down Death Trap after Death Trap after Death Trap, pull enemies together and do a lot of damage with it, and have some pretty crazy synergies. Throw into the poison traps there all the time because they get constantly reset. So there's definitely some potential for these pretty crazy endgame builds down the line. If all the stuff kind of works out the way I imagine it to, we're gonna see some pretty crazy things in the Diablo 4 endgame. And we are just getting started. So I'm really excited to see where this goes down the line. Imagine perma shadow clone builds, imagine like throwing death traps all the time. So I'm quite excited where this will lead us. And I really like that this preparation effect actually does have such a cool, unique cooldown reduction effect. It was relatively expectable, I guess, based on, for example, WoW having a preparation skill that reduces your cooldowns, Diablo 3 having a preparation skill that reduces your cooldowns, and the Rogue also having certain achievements in Diablo 4 that they talk about using ultimate abilities very frequently. In the end, I don't believe that every single build on Rogue will suddenly swap to this specialization in late game and then try to fit in an ultimate skill. This is still a very specialized niche, as I mentioned, and all of the options seem to be very viable and powerful in their own regard. In fact, most of the builds I have been Theorycrafting so far will run in a site anyway, but there can be those exceptions, like the one I just described, and I wanted to give you a bit of like the thought process behind making such a build. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about it, if you come up with some other crazy ideas, and I'll see you guys next time.